Hey y'all, Daniel here. Welcome back to My Pop 5. We have another illustrious guest for you. Matt Friend joins us to talk all things showbiz. Matt is a comedian, impressionist extraordinaire, and internet personality with television appearances from The Today Show to late night. We had a hilarious time talking to Matt and hearing his off-the-cuff bits as Roger the Alien or Howard Stern. So let's get into it. Here's our episode with Matt Friend.
Hello, everyone. We have the incredible comedian, impressionist, winner of the Kenan Thompson's Ultimate Comedy Experience, Mr. Matt Friend. Matt, thank you so much for joining My Pop 5 today.
Thanks so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, it's really awesome, man. One of the things as comedy and things have evolved with social media and the internet, I'm just so thrilled that I get to come across people like you. You know, I've always been such a big fan of comedy in general and just the art of impressions. And so when I first came across you, it was infectious and I went down a rabbit hole of all your work. So I'm such a big fan.
Thank you so much. I go down rabbit holes of impressions myself. Not mine. That would be weird. But actually, I kind of do sometimes. I want to make sure things are sounding good. But I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, you know, I wanted to get started and learn a little bit of your backstory. So I know you're currently in the New York area, but where did you grow up? And tell me a bit about your upbringing.
So I grew up in Chicago, about 5 minutes away from Second City. So I was always kind of very obsessed with comedy from a very young age. I was 4 years old when I discovered Austin Powers, which is the movie, the piece that got me into comedy and entertainment. And I just became completely obsessed and transfixed by Mike Myers' characters in the film, from Fat Bastard, Dr. Evil, Goldmember, all this crazy shit that was happening. And I remember I was 4. I had no clue what this guy was even saying. I didn't know what "do I make you Randy" meant. But I found the voices to be funny. And I just started doing impressions of Dr. all these characters. And then it kind of started doing impressions of teachers. And then my grandparents, parents, friends, my own friends. And then it became kind of this crazy obsessive list of over 250 impressions. Yeah, so from Chicago, now in New York. I went to NYU, graduated in the pandemic, so I'm 23.
Wow.
And it's just been a whirlwind 2 years. It's been crazy.
Heck yeah. So you didn't start doing the internet stuff and really blowing up until the pandemic, or did you start some of that stuff in college and in school?
Yeah, I mean, I was doing some YouTube stuff and also posting on Instagram pre-pandemic, but things really started to take off with the creation of TikTok when I started posting on there, which was really a pandemic thing. That's when things started to blow up for me. Certain videos getting like millions of views, and that kind of translated into other opportunities. And that's kind of the power of TikTok, and I guess the changing nature of the entertainment industry, because all these various TV opportunities I've been lucky enough to have throughout the past few months and year and a half have pretty much resulted from my TikTok account.
That's amazing, man. You mentioned Austin Powers. I want to kind of deep dive into that. But before we do, we ask all of our guests, without any context or any comment, can you tell us what your Pop 5 is?
I think my Pop 5 would be Austin Powers, as just mentioned, for sure. Saturday Night Live, as you can kind of see that by these cue cards behind me. Family Guy, maybe like Frank Sinatra, Johnny Carson.
Yeah.
It's kind of a mixture of old show business and new stuff.
That's amazing. Well, let's get into Austin Powers. You already started there. So Austin Powers was your first impression at 4 years old.
Yes.
So how were you introduced to the movie? Was it something that, you know, your family was watching, or how did you even get involved with Austin Powers?
You know, it must have been a mistake on my parents' part for having this DVD copy of the film.
Yeah.
My dad was having like a birthday party or something at my house, and he had a bunch of friends over. Maybe I wasn't feeling well, or I was just being loud and running around, and I guess they wanted to calm me down. So they finally let me watch what this mysterious looking DVD was, with the cover with the guy wearing the glasses and the ruffled shirt. And they finally let me watch it. So it was crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. And so as a kid, you mentioned you started just doing the quotes and stuff. Were they good impressions, or was it just, you just had fun saying them? Do you remember your parents saying anything like, dang, that sounded pretty good?
There's a lot of tape of me doing it.
Oh, wow.
Which is crazy. They sounded not bad. They've definitely, all these voices have gotten better.
Yeah.
But they did not sound bad. I will say, not to sound arrogant, but I mean, they're pretty good for a 4 or 5 year old, I think.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you had a knack for it, you know, kind of instantly.
Yeah, I think so.
Was it the first Austin Powers, or was it, you know, Goldmember?
The Spy Who Shagged Me. It was the first one.
Nice.
And then it kind of, got into everything else, up to Goldmember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's why I freaked out about that new Dr. Evil Super Bowl commercial. That was very
Yes.
exciting. I was like, are they teasing a fourth one? And if so, I have to get in it.
Yeah.
Okay. So full circle.
Yeah. Mike Myers does such an incredible job. With the first few times I watched it, I didn't even know it was him playing all the different characters.
It's wild. Yeah.
He does such a good job at, granted, I was also a child when that movie came out. So through a child's lens, I don't know that I would know any better, but he does each character so differently, and they each kind of have their own space that it's easy to forget that it's the same person just doing these different personas,
100%. Yeah. And that's probably part of what drew me to it as well. Maybe this idea that someone can become multiple personalities or people.
Yeah.
So it's pretty amazing. The Mike Myers thing kind of drew me into SNL as well.
Yeah. And so whenever you are, looking back on this now, it's clear that it had such an impact on you as a kid. Is it still something you go back to for inspiration or anything like that? Are they still movies you look at fondly? Just what's your relationship with it today?
Yeah, I actually was just watching, I think it's on Hulu now or something, Austin Powers movies. I haven't watched them all in their entirety in a long time. Sometimes it's kind of nostalgic where I'll watch clips of it on YouTube or whatever. Yeah, for sure.
Do you have memories or favorite moments from the movies that you think really stuck with you that you thought were really funny as a 4-year-old? I know you mentioned the quote, "Do I make you Randy?" But
fat bastard smelling his farts. Goldmember
eating the skin.
Off his skin was very memorable. The fembots with the boobs as a 4 or 5-year-old boy, like what the hell's going on?
Yeah.
I would say in the first movie, like one of the beginning scenes when he becomes unfrozen and he's taking 6 minutes to piss. That was really funny too. Just so many. Yeah, there were a lot of unforgettable moments, I would say.
Yeah. So talking about impressions in general, is it one of those things where there are some that come very naturally, or walk me through the process? Like, how meticulous is it in terms of trying to craft an impression, or know that it's one that's even attainable for you when you're kind of developing these things?
Yeah, it's a great question. People have asked me a lot about my process. I'm going to sound like a pretentious professor. In my process, I have an extensive research team. It's like, Don Rickles, the comedian, said that comedy is a personality. And in many ways, I think that impressions and this element of comedy is also kind of a personality. There is process involved. Certainly, I'm constantly talking like other people. And I'm sure that annoyed all my roommates in college. I can't imagine living with myself. That would have been a nightmare because you're living with 250 other people, theoretically, if you're living with me. But it's just kind of a part of me. Like, I'll pop out a Stewie Griffin at a random time. I don't know what had happened. It's great. Roger the alien will just be busting out. It's insane. Who ate all my pecans, Sandys, and crocodiles? Yeah. I don't know. It just happened. Oh, golly. Jeff Goldblum. It happens. I just had a mini seizure in front of you. But I mean, in terms of the actual serious process, I would say I've always been obsessed with show business and entertainment and entertainment history. And I just watch a lot of late night and talk show appearances. And I just watch a lot of celebrity interviews. Like, I just was assigned an impression for a TV appearance I have coming up this week, actually, of a popular TV host who I do not do an impression of. And this was last week. And the producer asked if I could figure out an impression of this person. Not to be weird, but you'll see it presumably like this week.
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe. And I actually was able to completely get it.
Nice.
Yeah. It's pretty, and I think that's kind of how SNL works too. Like, where certain people can come up in the news and cast members will have to kind of figure something out. But that felt good knowing I could do that.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. And I think what's so crazy about that is it's always so live and current, I think part of that, especially in the SNL space, is you also do a really great, Mitch McConnell, which, I've seen you do before. Yeah. I know it's in response to being able to have commentary on current events.
Yeah, that's right. Listen, you can't bring up Mitch without expecting me to have the glasses ready off to the side. Because let me tell you, my chins are hurting from speaking this much in character. Yes.
Okay, anyways, you can't queue up Mitch McConnell and not expect me to contort myself into him. So I had to apologize for the interruption.
No, you're good. That's fair. Just having that response and being able to do that, that's awesome that you have a process that works. Has there ever been any moments where it's just like, no, I can't do that? Has anyone ever asked something that's just like, I wouldn't even know where to begin in terms of trying to do something like that?
In terms of a character or a specific voice or Yeah, I mean, like for like a higher pitched female, that might be kind of trickier. But I think with anyone, I can kind of figure out elements of the person and figure something out.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
great. One of my favorites that you do is your stern. Part of your normal timbre is in that space. I didn't know if there was a situation where someone was like, "Hey, Matt, you kind of sound like Stern," and you're just like, "Well, I never thought about that."
That's very. I have the wig, so it's. I was going to put it on, but it is true. I mean, there are some voices, I got to tell you, as I get closer to the mic, where it does kind of make sense. Yeah, like for the Howard, that some of my Jeff Goldblum, Michael Bublé. I don't even know if it was naturally my voice. Maybe my voice is just kind of shaped to become sort of a mixture of all these people. But I think so. Yeah, some voices are naturally closer to my own.
Yeah. No, that's
Sure.
awesome. Well, hey, let's kind of get into SNL. I think that's a lot of people in this space, whether it's comedy or sketch comedy or doing characters and stuff. SNL is kind of the gold standard for where people ultimately want to be or get inspiration from. So, what was your introduction to SNL? And do you have any favorite eras or sketches that you're really drawn to in terms of that show?
Yeah, SNL also was introduced at a young age. I think my parents, we had a bunch of best of DVDs in my house. There was a best of Mike Myers, I think. I think there was a best of Will Ferrell. This was seeing some of the most iconic sketches, obviously, in the history of the show. And then I came up with YouTube, so I'm 23. So I grew up watching every Johnny Carson clip, every SNL sketch I could find, kind of studying. Thinking about it now, I guess it kind of was studying, but I mean, I was watching them and just laughing my ass off. In terms of eras, I think Lorne Michaels said in an interview once, everybody will always say their favorite SNL era is the one that they grew up with. I mean, in my case, that's true. I love the Bill Hader, Andy Samberg, Will Forte, Kristen Wiig. That for me is like a sweet spot, especially because of Hader. But in terms of like cast members, Phil Hartman's a big inspiration. I do a Phil. Not sure if your audience would know what he sounds like anymore, but that's a lot of fun doing Phil.
Yeah.
He was actually killed about a month before I was born. Fun fact. But Phil Hartman, Keenan's a big one, not just as a fan, but like in terms of also the shaping of my career, which is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I love all. Dana Carvey.
You're right about what you're first introduced to. That's generally what people mostly feel most comfortable with
For sure.
for those trends. Without getting too specific, in terms of your dream scenario, is SNL something you would ultimately want to be able to do? Do you like sketch comedy? Do you think that fits? One thing to be able to do, impressions really well, but I also know the art of sketch is its own thing, and certain comedy elements are also different, and you have to hone almost three separate crafts. So, what is kind of dream scenario for Matt, and where do you kind of see your future and where you'd like to be?
Yeah, I mean, look, SNL, my username is Matterday Night Live on Instagram, so it's no secret that I love SNL. And if I were ever lucky enough to have an opportunity to audition, that would be a dream come true. And you never know what's going to happen in this business, especially as things are changing so rapidly with new technologies and social media platforms. But yeah, I mean, it's always been a goal and a dream of mine. You're totally right, because it's one thing to be able to do impressions, and then there's a whole other skill set in terms of sketch comedy. I do love sketch comedy. That's also why I do stand-up, because in my stand-up, I'm kind of doing mini sketches on stage. So I kind of will write around the impressions or have certain characters or impressions kind of have a conversation or something. It's a great point, because when I first started doing stand-up, I would just kind of go on stage and I would say, "Hello, it's Stewie Griffin," and do a bunch of different impressions. But now there's actual writing involved, which I think is kind of what SNL is.
Yeah, and that's an evolution, right? Things have to be funny outside of the impression as well, right? In order to also get
100%.
the reaction. So that's awesome. And all the clips that
100%.
I've seen, and even the little sketches you do, on your social media, they're hilarious with or without the impression in most instances, So I think that's something.
Thank you so much. That means the world. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I mean, what I think is also great is that you kind of capture as well is, some of the greatest on SNL do as well, is even if the impression, like you mentioned, if it's something you have to learn that week of, even if it's not the most pinpoint perfect thing, there are other things that sell it, whether it's like the body language or the other elements, that kind of help sell that character and make it humorous.
Yeah.
And I think you do a really great job. I think like your Rami Malek, for example, too, is one where it's just, just your mannerisms, I think, capture it as much as the voice, or whatever you do there, So.
Yeah, well, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it is fun doing certain impressions like the Ramalama Ding Dong. Because you don't even have to hear what I sound like. It's just I contort my lips, I bug out my eyes, and it's incredible.
It's kind of like the McConnell, Novak, Djokovic. Yeah, that's interesting. But thank you.
Yeah, you're a master at this craft, at least from my perspective.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So tell me, before we move on from SNL, I know you had the chance
Yeah.
to, because of the Kenan Thompson experience, visit the after party. You had a chance to visit some shows and stuff like that. How was that experience? Did you ultimately love that? I'm assuming so.
Yeah, that was crazy. That was a very surreal experience. Kenan did this talent search called Kenan Thompson's Ultimate Comedy Experience. It's kind of a nationwide talent search for comedians, next generation of talent. I ended up getting discovered by the producers of it at Gotham Comedy Club. I was doing a set there. And then I kind of skipped over the other rounds and kind of went straight to the final round at Caroline's. And I ended up winning it. Kenan brought me to SNL and backstage and the after party. And that was very surreal, crazy experience. I remember just like trying to soak it all in. It was wild. Yeah, it was a night I'll never forget for sure.
Yeah.
And it was also funny because I wasn't a stranger to that building because 4 months before that happened, I was interning at the Tonight Show while I was in college at NYU. So now I was kind of in 30 Rock in a whole other setting. Like I could be cool, or I could take out my phone and take pictures and chill with the talent.
Yeah.
As opposed to being a scared intern getting coffees for people.
I wonder, and maybe the interning is a reason why this might not have happened, but a lot of what I get worried about, it's like they say don't meet your heroes kind of thing, but there's also something to be said about there's the mystique of television. And then the second when you're there backstage or behind the cameras and you can see all the inner mechanics of all the logistics that have to make things work, it no longer becomes the pristine thing that you've seen on the TV. Did you have an experience where it was just like, I'm fascinated by this, and so I'm excited to see all the background things? Or did some of it lose its luster because it's not what you see on television? We'll get back to the show in just a moment. We're pausing for a brief moment because we want to talk about some ways you can help support the show. The truth is, you're already supporting just by listening. But in season 2, one of our biggest goals is connecting with you. So if you're interested in helping us out, here are some ways you can support. Number 1, rate and review on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Number 2, follow us on Instagram at MyPop5. And number 3, share your favorite episode or the show with a friend and tag us when you do. Art is at the center of what we do here, and I mentioned we want to connect with you. So if you share the show with a friend and let us know, we're going to pick someone every week and buy you that vinyl, book, or movie that's been sitting on your wish list. Anyway, thank you so much for listening, and we'll get back to the show.
That's a great question, and way more luster. It became even more magical. It was actually the opposite of you kind of get to see what's behind the curtain and it doesn't become magical. This time it was like way more it was like I'm in the room where it happens, Lin-Manuel Miranda style, okay? Mm-hmm. The moving pieces on SNL, like watching it, even at the Tonight Show too, it's insane. It's a full-on machine.
Mm-hmm.
People off to the side when the show's live, handing props to the performers on stage as the cue cut. Like I remember the first time I stepped foot in the Tonight Show studio as an intern, it was truly like an out-of-body experience.
Mm-hmm.
I was floating. Like that's literally what it felt like.
Wow.
Like the pressure rose to my head. Couldn't even believe what was happening. But no, I think it actually adds more magic to it.
And how cool, I think internships are one thing, but I think you got the chance to see people that you're inspired by in a field that you're wanting to do. I don't know how frequently you worked, but I'm assuming almost every night or something, you're getting to absorb all this stuff and even get more to study on and, influence in your own work.
Yeah, that's true for sure.
Awesome. Well, hey, you mentioned it a bit ago, and kind of going back to the older days and the older greats of Sinatra and Carson. What was your intro to Sinatra and why do you think he was so impactful for you?
It was my dad. He had all these discs in his car. And I remember hearing this voice and I just was like, what is this? What is going on? Because it felt so full. It was milky, like a velvet butter. And I copy people's voices, but that is one that no one will ever be able to duplicate. It's just impossible. I don't know. Maybe it's all the years of Jack Daniels and cigarette smoke and pain and heartbreak, but I don't know what it is. But yeah, and then I just kind of discovered all of his music and all of his albums. And I'm an old soul, but I just his music is just it's so good. I mean,
yeah.
And that's kind of maybe a little of why Seth MacFarlane is such a big inspiration to me too. Family Guy. He has this guy, Joel McNeely. I think he orchestrates a lot of the music, or he conducts a lot of the music in Family Guy, which is kind of based off of old show tune type stuff. Yeah, Sinatra's just the greatest. His music's so good.
Just for some background, I'm also a musician.
Wow.
I went to jazz school. I'm also curious, hearing that, is jazz your normal form of recreational listening, or what do you normally go to listen to? And is Sinatra still in that rotation for you?
He 100% is. I love a lot of different types of music. I'll be listening to Frank Sinatra, and then I'll be listening to Chance the Rapper, and then I'll be listening to the Beatles, and then I'll go to Otis Redding, and then Dean Martin, and then I'll go to Jack Harlow. It's like so weird. Still a lot of Sinatra. I can look up what I've been listening to recently. I was just listening to the Michael Bublé My Valentine cover. A lot of Steely Dan for some reason recently. Some Grateful Dead. A lot of John Mayer. I love John Mayer. Listen to some David Bowie, Yeba, KC and the Sunshine Band.
Yeah. So a little bit of everything.
Yeah, a lot of stuff.
That's the best way. I think you have to be informed by all these different places. That's how you can just
For sure. 100%.
be well-rounded for sure. What I also think is interesting about Sinatra is not only did he have all the music aspects to him, but he also did acting, was in film, and was so charismatic even on screen outside of just being the vocal performer that he is. Did you get much into his movies or anything like that? Or was it primarily in the music space for you and how you were inspired by him?
Yeah, no, that's another great question. I did. I actually read a couple of my favorite books, this 2-part biography on Frank Sinatra by the author James Kaplan. It was like this amazing voyage, kind of like take 2-part bio on the epic life that was Frank Sinatra. And I did watch like From Here to Eternity. Yeah, I should probably watch some more Sinatra movies, but mainly known for the music and also all of his like talk show appearances and interviews. Like I watch late night interviews the same way like a movie fanatic would watch movies. I'm obsessed with late night is my specifically favorite thing.
Yeah, well, that's a good transition then to also talk about Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson, yes, very fun.
What's interesting to me is obviously this was not something that was on TV in your lifetime.
No, it was not. It certainly was not. That is true.
What do you think it was that finally caught your attention with Johnny Carson and kind of led to your interest there? Was it a YouTube rabbit hole or what led to that moment,
He was kind of like emblematic of this golden age of entertainers like Don Rickles, Rich Little, who I actually met when I performed in Las Vegas. I did a show before COVID at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Club with Kenan Thompson. And I ended up going to see Rich Little, who, if you guys don't know, was kind of like the impressionist, like a one-man SNL before SNL. Like he would go on Carson and he would do like the Dean Martin roasts. But I just thought Carson was just watching all of his interviews and stuff, just clearly the timing, just the way he would listen to his guests. I think his just timing and listening is what made him so uniquely amazing. But with that being said, I mean, I also love like Conan, Fallon, Colbert, John Oliver, Kimmel, all the new stuff too. But I feel like everybody would just say that Carson was kind of like the gold standard of late night hosting.
Totally. And then in terms of comedy, I think there was that whole prestige of he would let comedians come perform, which is awesome. And then you'd get that potential stamp of approval by getting invited into the guest chair.
Which is just mind-boggling to me. That was an age where you go on this guy's TV show, and then if you do well as a comedian, your career is literally made overnight. And now it's just so different where there is not a show like that exists. You can't just go on one late night show and have a career overnight. That's not how it works anymore because of social media and TikTok and the fact that Charli D'Amelio is getting more views on a video of her drinking an iced coffee than Johnny Carson ever received in his entire career. So it's pretty mind-boggling to think.
Yeah, it's so crazy. We were having conversations somewhat recently, about how art has really evolved across all spectrums, right? There's an easier entry point, right? There's no longer necessarily gatekeepers preventing you from being able to enter the sphere, but it's also just led to an oversaturation, right? So it's like, I'm so glad that I get to come across people like you that, granted, I like to believe that if it were 20 years ago, you would have still had the opportunity and your talent would have soared. But at the same time, there were so many other boxes that had to get checked to even get the chance to have these various opportunities. So I'm grateful that I have access to your work because of things like the internet, but it also is harder for, really great creators to also get seen just the way that the world works now.
Yeah, no, I've talked about this before too. The whole concept of gatekeepers. It's crazy. Going back to like my TV appearances, well, I was featured on Jimmy Kimmel because Sebastian Maniscalco, who I do an impression of, this Italian comedian talks like this. What? He That came out. It just came out. He was just guest hosting. He showed one of my TikToks on the air. But then a couple weeks later, the executive producer of the Today Show reached out because her son found one of my TikToks and showed it to her. Showed it to his mom.
Wow.
You got to check this kid out. To think that you used to have to get discovered in a club, you have to go to a comedy club, these talent scouts or whoever, producers would be sitting there. And now I can make a video in my kitchen and then appear on TV and have it lead to all these other TV appearances, Good Day LA, Good Day New York, all these other shows.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like even a month ago, I saw John Oliver on the street, who I do an impression of. Are you fucking kidding me? I mean, this is absurd. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw him on the street, posted it on TikTok, got like 2 million views. And then next thing I know, like 2 days later, Carson Daly talks about this kid making a name for himself doing impressions on the Today Show.
Mm-hmm.
It's wild. It's totally wild.
That's happened a couple of times. And I don't know the circumstance. Maybe it was prearranged. I think you also saw Rami Malek in public too, right? So like, how is this happening? And what is your kind of mental approach when you see them? You're like, oh my God, I have to make something happen with this? Or
yeah, people ask me this a lot. Maybe I'll just allow it to be just sort of a mystery. Who knows how I make this happen? Now, they are random. It's fate, I guess. The John Oliver one was planned.
Mm-hmm.
We were doing a set at the same comedy club, but yeah, everything else is random. It's wild.
That's so cool. Are you nervous to approach them to say, hey, I do impressions of you, and do you mind if I do one for you? Or how does that conversation go?
Some of them actually know me now,
Mm.
which, not to be like a dick, but like some of them have seen me like just off of TikTok and stuff, which makes it easier. Like Andy Cohen was like, wait, you do me and Howard, right? Oh my God. Amazing. Let's fire off a video. Amazing. So it was his idea actually to shoot a video. I'm definitely nervous. Like with the Rami one, I was more nervous. Got to be ready to go. That's just me. That's my personality. I'm ready. Got to be ready at all times. You never know what's going to happen living in New York.
That's true, man. It's crazy.
That's where the improv skills come in handy. Some of the improv training I've done.
Yeah. I think some of it's also just being aware of your surroundings too. Living in LA for me, there's been so many moments where I'm like, you didn't see that we just passed by Shia LaBeouf or whatever? And I'm just like, nope, I didn't notice it. So some of it is just being aware of your surroundings and being able to catch the people you're walking by.
It's funny you say LA because it's such a uniquely New York thing too. I feel like because no one's walking around in LA. They're all in their cars or in their houses, I feel like.
Yeah.
And in New York, Will Arnett's walking down the street. See him at a coffee shop. Say hey to Dave Chappelle. Getting his latte. You know what I'm saying? It's like you never know what's going to happen.
More communal, I guess.
I'll have to come back to LA though and see which celebs I can find.
I'm curious, talking about running into people in New York, having them be super receptive to wanting to maybe make a quick video with you or something like that. It seems that there's kind of a jump that goes from making online content to ending up in the industry. You have people who've made their whole career off of it. Someone like Bo Burnham. I'm wondering, what is the reception like with some of the more industry kind of old school folks that got in before the internet? Are they pretty welcoming to the medium?
Yeah, I mean, I'm still figuring it out myself. I mean, I'm 23, I'm coming up. I think it'd be a horrendous mistake not to be.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this is it now, in my view. TikTok, this younger generation has taken over. Just the talent that is arising. Comedians, singers, dancers, actors. It's extraordinary. I think even Seth Meyers hired a writer off of TikTok. I think this is how, people are getting discovered. And I think that brands are marketing on TikTok, effectively new forms of commercials. That's kind of a way I've been making money too, doing a lot of like brand deals and paid sponsorships. So yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
But we'll see how things evolve. Things are changing a lot.
Every day, almost, it seems like there's, different ways that people are taking advantage and growing and different entry points. Well, hey, we'll get into your last one here. You've alluded to it a few times here, but Family Guy. Tell me what you love about Family Guy and kind of why it's here on your list.
Well, what's not to love? Oh my God, you're crazy, you bastard. Yep, there you go.
Okay. You're like, we didn't ask you to do the voice, Matt. Shut up. We get it. Okay.
I love it. I'm loving it.
It's the greatest.
Mm-hmm.
Seth MacFarlane is probably my number one comedic inspiration. I know the musicality, the voices, the things they say. When you're a 10-year-old boy watching this shit and you're not laughing, something's probably wrong with you. Like, we were all like a 10-year-old, anyone, but like, like I would just be dying watching this show. when I was like 10, 12 years old. And I still do. And I get very nostalgic watching it too. Bird, 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 bird. Bird is the word. Well, don't you know about the bird? Peter's gonna tell you that the bird is the word. So like, oh yeah, we love the bird. We love the bird. Hey guys, Roger the Alien, different show, still Seth MacFarlane. But anyways, I love animation. Big Mouth. All right, my dude, Coach Steve, man. Oh my god! Like it just, animation. These characters, these insane voices are the greatest. But favorite thing about Family Guy. I love cutaway humor, which is big with Family Guy. I actually have been doing that in my stand-up now, which is very interesting.
Oh, wow.
Which no one does. So I'll be like, God, this crowd is even weirder than Paul Giamatti's Kool-Aid Man audition. And then I'll go, oh, yes. Oh, very well. Very well indeed. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Do I care if the crowd laughs? No, because I know it's a good bit. Who gives a shit?
Yeah.
I know it's funny.
Yeah.
So obviously that would work better with an animation. I don't know. I just love him. He's the best.
Yeah, I think, they do a great job of having these little vignettes that weave in and out of the story as well. I remember also being young and just like, it's like a bit that has become recurring, but I remember the first time I seen like when Peter falls and he does the like just over and over.
It's ridiculous.
And it's always they sit with it just long enough to where it's uncomfortable, but like not too long.
It's insane. It's insane. Yeah, it's crazy.
Or his fights with the chicken and like there's just so many things.
Those I didn't love.
Really?
Those always kind of annoyed me. I was like, all right, this is too long. I want to see the voices. They're okay. The chicken things are okay. I don't know.
Or I also love when, I don't remember the plot line anymore, but when Stewie is like just fucking up Brian because he didn't give him his money.
Where's my money, bitch?
Yeah.
Where's my money, man? Hey, where's my money? Yeah, that's great. That's a great one.
It's such a good show. And I think you mentioned, I was going to ask, but you already kind of alluded to it, that animated sitcoms, I think, are big in your world and things that you love. I think it's also interesting, like in so many of them, how many of them have one character that does like 20 voices? Like Seth MacFarlane. And I think it alludes back to Austin Powers. We're talking about one person playing many characters. And in Big Mouth, Nick Kroll plays, 5, 6, if not more, different regular characters, So what do you think is the reason for that? And is it just because these guys are such gifted talents that it makes sense to have them do as many characters as possible?
Well, in the case of those guys, I mean, they're their shows. So like Kroll created it. Seth MacFarlane created it, and they're extremely talented. If I was creating my own show, I'd probably want to do 8 or 10 voices too. Hank Azaria, he was on the first season of The Simpsons, so he was original cast. Of course he was going to do a lot of voices, so it's kind of luck, I guess, as well.
Yeah, and then you also have like incredible talents like in Family Guy as well, with like Seth Green, who is known for doing so many incredible voices as well.
Austin Powers.
Yep, that connection again. Yeah, well, anyway, Matt, we'll get you out of here, but before we do, we ask everyone 5 rapid fire questions. So first one here, if you could be on a reality TV show, which one would you choose?
Oh my God. Very good question. Wow. Well, I did hear recently that Dana Carvey on Howard Stern described Saturday Night Live as a reality TV show. So SNL?
Let's do it. We'll accept
it. I don't know. Maybe it was something with Bravo and Andy Cohen tie-in.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. If people have never consumed any of your Pop 5, what's the one that you'd want them to go experience right now?
Oh my God. Maybe some specific SNL political impressions like Phil Hartman, Dana Carvey sketches.
Okay, go check it out, everyone. What would you say has been a top highlight for you in terms of either your comedy career or your impressions where, you feel most proud of?
Winning Keenan's competition was a big one.
Yeah.
Being on the Today Show and all these other different shows at this point has been pretty extraordinary.
That's awesome. All right. If you had to pick your top 3 impressions, what would you say those are?
These days, Jeff Goldblum, I would say. Maybe Howard Stern, Rami Malek. I love doing Tim Cook, though, the CEO of Apple.
Yeah, your videos with those are so good.
There's over 250 of them, so it's crazy.
One of my favorites you do is Bublé, too. Like, I remember when you did, like, the Merry Christmas, as Michael Bublé earlier this year, and I was just like, that was fucking phenomenal.
Look nothing like Christmas. Thank you. Yeah. I do the speaking Bublé, Michael Bublé, who sounds like this when he's talking, and then I do the singing Bublé. Out of the tree of life, I just picked me a plum. Yeah, I love doing the Bublé. He's so good.
Awesome. And last question here. What's something you tell a past version of yourself?
Get busy living. No, I'm kidding. I would say just keep following your dreams and just, like go out and do it.
Mm-hmm.
That's very, everybody's like, how do you do things? I'm still figuring it out, but most important thing is just go out and do it.
Yeah, totally. All right. Well, what do you want to promote and where can people follow you in all of your work?
Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram, although I might be changing my name soon, but it's at Matterday Night Live, Matt Friend on Instagram, on Twitter, at mfriend1998 on Twitter. But yeah, go ahead, search Matt Friend on the old gram. Say, hey, I have a big show at Caroline's on Broadway on March 22nd at 7 p.m. So if you guys want to get tickets, come see me.
We absolutely will. I'll make sure we put all that in the episode description here as well. But Matt, thanks so much for joining. It was really such a joy. And, we're just endlessly thankful. You're hilarious and we're such big fans.
Thanks, guys. I hope it turns out good.
All right, y'all, that's it for today. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Matt. You can check out his work on TikTok, Twitter, and Instagram. We'll be sure to leave all of his links in the description. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and Twitter at MyPop5. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe and leave us a rating on Apple Podcasts. It really goes a long way. Well, we'll see you next week. Until then, what's your Pop 5?